I think this Shiloh, Hendrickson, Metcalf situation is a microcosm of a much bigger problem. For decades, we've had black people literally running around with black supremacy, committing crimes, not getting accountability for their actions, and then they blame the system for it. The reality is this: black people have been able to get away with a ridiculous amount of privilege in America for a very long time. They're able to be racist with impunity. They're able to call white people crackers without being challenged back. For literally the better part of almost 2 decades since the Obama era, we've had to have BLM and liberalism shoved down our throats, and quite frankly, we're all tired of it.
Let me bring in Myron Gaines, because you've been smirking and laughing. What's funny about any of this?
Well, I mean, I find it interesting that you guys want to virtue signal and, wag the finger and say she's a racist and everything else like this.
No, she admitted she's a racist.
Well, let me
I'm not wagging a finger at anybody.
She self-identifies as a racist.
But Myron, with respect, Myron, I don't need to wag a finger when somebody says, yeah, I'm racist, I use the N-word against black people, I don't care. That's a racist. I'm not wagging any finger. I'm not accusing anybody. She is admitting it proudly. Even you can't defend that, surely.
Everybody is racist to some degree. The reality is it depends on, a lot of people want to be politically correct. A lot of people want to sit there and say, I'm not racist at all. We all have biases. We all have stereotypes. We all make jokes. We all are racist to some degree. Now, how racist you are is a whole other situation, but everyone is racist. That's number one. Next thing I want to say, see, I think this Shiloh, Hendrickson, Metcalf situation is a microcosm of a much bigger problem. And that bigger problem is what I call systemic organized. And what I mean by this is, for decades, we've had black people literally running around with black supremacy, committing crimes, not getting accountability for their actions, and then they blame the system for it. For example, George Floyd, criminal. Ferguson, criminals. Freddie Gray, criminal. A lot of these people are criminals, and what ends up happening is they challenge the police officer, they get into a physical altercation, things go left, they die, something happens, use of force is utilized, and then they want to cry about the result, when in reality, it's not the police killing black people, it's black people killing black people. And if you want to talk about black on white violence, black people kill white people 2 times as much. And on top of that, most of the shootings in America, a lot of the times, are white people killing, white cops killing other unarmed white men. So this whole systemic racism or police brutality, or, oh, it's all so messed up, the reality is this: black people have been able to get away with a ridiculous amount of privilege in America for a very long time. They're able to be racist with impunity. They're able to call white people crackers without being challenged back. And quite frankly, white America's had enough of it, and the chickens have come to roost. Now, look, am I saying that's awesome? Am I saying that's great? No, but for literally the better part of almost 2 decades since the Obama era, we've had to have BLM and liberalism shoved down our throats, and quite frankly, we're all tired of it.
Right, but just to be clear, you would have no problem with one member of this panel openly saying she uses the N-word at black people with impunity and is proud of being a racist. You have no problem with that?
My worldview on the protection of the First Amendment and freedom of speech overrides my personal feelings. She has the right to say
That's fine.
You
can support the First Amendment, but you can also have a personal view about what she said.
My feelings are irrelevant. The Constitution is the Constitution. That's what matters.
Oh, that's fascinating. Hold on. So when it comes to chastising black Americans about their behavior, about calling white people crackers, as you say, about their moral claims about the racist system, you can levy a judgment against black Americans for all the things they do. But when it comes to this woman saying the N-word and this other woman endorsing it and saying that she herself uses the N-word, now all of a sudden we can only talk about the Constitution and the legal right. We can't offer any moral judgment against it. That's disingenuous. And it's as the only black American up here, that's quite frustrating to hear.
Here's the thing. If you want to be soft and get offended by that, that's your fucking problem, not mine.
Let me ask Ricky. Let me ask Ricky. Ricky,
this isn't about being soft any more than when you were desperately saving these white people.
Hold on. This sensitive nature that you have is precisely why we have this problem.
It's not about being sensitive. It's about I didn't articulate. Hold on. Let me finish, Myron. Let me speak and then I'll let you respond. Myron, sure. I didn't articulate any sensitivity here. What I said, in the same way that you levied a judgment against black people, I'm levying one against the claims you're making. I'm no more sensitive than you were when you made your claim. I'm simply saying I disagree with you. And to immediately jump to you're being sensitive is just a distraction. I'm making an argument here. Just respond to my argument.
No, and my argument to respond to that is this: political correctness, liberalism, and making sure that we are politically correct and don't use certain words to offend people is precisely why we're in the situation that we're in. For decades, we've had to literally tiptoe around saying certain things around certain people, while the other group of people has been able to have impunity and be able to be as racist as they want to be, as violent as they want to be, without any type of consequence. And if you call it out, you're labeled a racist. The reality is this: Black people don't want to live around black people. I don't want to live around a bunch of black people. I move to neighborhoods where it's majority white because I know I'm safe. Now, this uncomfortable reality that no one wants to say, so I'll say it for them. Black people commit a lot of crimes. A majority of the violent crime committed in the United States is committed by a small percentage of people, and they tend to be black men. Look, the reality is the reality. People don't want to say it, but the political correctness and being nice and not wanting to tell the truth is precisely this problem. And the reason why you're seeing all the support for Metcalf and Shiloh, etc., is because white people have not been able to step up and say what they want to say for a very long time because of what I said before, systemic, organized, where they don't take accountability for their
All right,
decisions.
let me bring in Ricky to respond. Ricky.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to say that I agree that virtue signaling went too far, that political correctness went too far, but we're going from virtue signaling being the norm and being praised to now vice signaling being the norm and being praised. It's not just a matter of does this woman have the right to use that word? I believe that she has the right. I disagree with it. But is she now being rewarded with $500,000? Why are we rewarding people for performing vice instead of virtue? This is not healthy. This is destructive to our society. This is destructive to our social fabric, to our culture, to our ability to live with other fellow Americans. It's gross to reward someone for bad behavior. It's one thing to tolerate it, to say that she has the right to do it, but she called an autistic 5-year-old the N-word. Like, I'm sorry, but I feel like we're kind of like missing the point in the actual context. You can say that it's part of this bigger meta story of black and white America, but it actually is just like a short little clip, and you don't even know the context of it, and it's actually gross, and if we can't just say that it's gross and bad, then I don't really know where we are.
Well, I think it's interesting to me that Lily Gaddis, you retweeted Nick Fuentes, the white supremacist. He said black people just raised $500,000 for a cold-blooded killer who stabbed a white teenager to death. So I don't want to hear one word about the Shiloh Hendricks fundraiser. Either everyone gets to be tribal or nobody does. Why would you retweet that?
Because I agree with it. Because we have to fight fire with fire. I mean, at some point, why are
nobody does?
Why are people allowed to be tribal? Why are black people allowed to be tribal? But as soon as white people stand up for themselves, we're labeled a racist. And by the way, you call people racist when you want them to stop talking about things.
No, I called you a racist because you admitted you were racist. Hang on. I called, just to be clear, I called you a racist because you openly, proudly admitted you're a racist. So it wasn't a question of exposing you or pointing my finger or trying to get this out of you. You proudly sat there, bold as brass, and said, yeah, I use the N-word all the time against black people. I'm a racist and I'm proud of it. That's what you did.
Racism is just having a preference. I prefer not to live around black people. I prefer not to live in a country where white people in our country are disproportionately attacked by black people. Where in my country, you can have an Austin Metcalf where he asks a guy to leave and he gets stabbed in the heart. I prefer that. That's a preference. Now, what a real racist is, in my opinion, is seeing someone as less human. I'm a Christian. I believe everyone's created in God's image. So I don't see anyone as less human. But that doesn't mean I'm not allowed to have a preference and say, I don't like what happens to be coming out of this community or that community. How is that a bad thing? How is that not just a preference?
Because you've literally made black people sound lesser humans. You don't want to live around them. You want to use the N-word in relation to them, a word that you know causes that community unbelievable offense.
My fault? Is that my fault? If they have bad behavior, if they want to act in a certain way, if I have to cross the street and be afraid that maybe because of the crime statistics that are very real, by the way, is that my fault or is that their fault for having bad behavior?
That's mind-boggling to me for multiple reasons. I mean, we're talking about bad behavior. You know, we've never lynched you, we've never enslaved you, we've never done any of the deep-seated structural forms of injustice to white people that white people have done to black people, and yet to claim some kind of moral superiority in the midst of, and again, in the context of a conversation where a white woman is calling a 5-year-old autistic child the N-word, and we're talking about black people's bad behavior. This is absurd. And the idea of fighting fire with fire, again, is a dishonest argument. Just to take us back to the point here, the people who are supporting Carmelo Anthony's campaign believe that he was wrongfully charged and they're trying to get him legal defense. The people who are defending this woman are saying, yes, we know you called the 5-year-old autistic black child the N-word, and we want more of it. We approve of it. We support it. These are not the same thing. And it's bonkers to me that we couldn't all stand and say, hey, it is wrong to call a 5-year-old autistic black child the N-word. I mean, Myron, let me just ask you that question. I think this is a yes or no question. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do you think the woman was wrong to do what she did to that child in that park?
I don't approve of that. But what I will say is that it's very important to understand the entire context of what led us to this position. Because again, Metcalf and Hendricks is a microcosm of a much larger problem. Earlier, we were talking about tribalism when you were mentioning Nick Fuentes' tweet. Here's the thing. Black people could be as tribal as they want to be. You have people like Tariq Nasheed, Dr. Umar Johnson running around about black power and marry black women and keep it in the hood and all this other stuff. But if white people assemble and say, you know what, white power, we need to keep our nation white, they're immediately ostracized and labeled as supremacists, and they get banned off every single platform. I find that interesting. And matter of fact, you went ahead.
Is that the same thing?
No, actually, it is the same thing. Because here's the problem with black people.
No, it's not.
Hold on, let me finish this. Black people practice the very racism they cry about. You guys can gather together and say Black Lives Matter, Black Power, but if white people get together and say white power gather together, they're considered white supremacists and they get banned off every single platform. Why is that Jared Taylor and Nick Fuentes are banned off every platform for practicing white nationalism, but black people are allowed to stand every single platform getting interviews on a Breakfast Club? Explain that to me. There's a two-tier situation here where black people are able to benefit off of being racist while whites are not. And what we're dealing with right now in America is literally a backlash to this black supremacy has been able to run around unchecked for a long time, and no one has the balls to call it out. Here's the other thing I want to say. Everyone's flipping out over Shiloh Hendricks is saying the N-word.
Can I respond to the point you just made, though?
No, hold on. Nobody flipped out like this when the United States was getting destroyed in 2020 because of black protests destroying every liberal city in America. So I don't want to hear it about, she made $100,000 because she said the N-word. Who cares? They destroyed billions of dollars of structure because someone got killed who was a criminal. That's the problem in America. You guys get a privilege that no one else gets to enjoy. You could be racist.
Okay. All right, I have to hang on. I'm going to hold it there. We've got another guest joining us. Mark, I'll come back to you to respond to that in a moment. Okay, let's go back to the panel there. I mean, Ricky, it seemed to me a lot of inconsistencies in Mr. Wells's position, not least the donning of the Christian hat when it suits them, but then removing it when it doesn't.
You know, I think it's definitely tough to make the call here and there and where to censor. I err on the side of not censoring as much as possible, but I agree with you that the selectivity of having issues with abortion but not with these campaigns is certainly a problem. But I also want to go back to our point before, too, and make the point that I hate this argument that because some people were tribal, we should be tribal, too. And shouldn't we want to live in a society where we say tribalism is bad in general and negative in general, and so therefore we should be erring towards individualism and not fighting tribalism with more tribalism? I think that's a net negative.
I agree. Myron, your last words on this.
The thing with tribalism, it's a natural human instinct. Like, we are literally designed to want to be in communities and want to be a part of a set of community because it ensures our survival. It's been that way since the beginning of time. So the thing is that people are typically going to align with people that share similar features, and that's why we have the tribalism we have going on right now. So the problem is, it's not going to go anywhere. I think the problem is that we've had this penting up for literally decades, and this has been a response to it. You have people that are coming out and supporting someone who you guys might deem as a terrible racist, but I think it's also very important to understand how we got here, because if we're going to look at the smaller problem, we can't look at the bigger problem, and it's what I said before, unchecked, systemic.
All right, Mark Lamont Hill, your last words on this.
This repeated use of the word, I think, first of all, I want to just register that as offensive. Particularly as someone who doesn't identify as a member of that community and who is not, right? I think that's incredibly
I'm the definition of African-American. I'm the definition of African-American.
And troublesome. And as a Sudanese American or an outsider who's using African-American in a very technical term, the same way that Elon Musk is an African-American, I think it is a bit disingenuous. But the bigger issue here, I think, is that, you know, this idea of equating of one side to the other side often loses track of this issue of power. To use his example, when black people stand up and say, hey, let's build our own stuff. Hey, let's have a black power movement. That is not the same as a white power. I'll let you speak uninterrupted. Let me finish, please. My Sudanese brother. So when a black person says, hey, let's preserve our culture, I have no problem with Italians or Irish people or anyone else saying, let's preserve our culture. But when we don't talk about ethnicity, but actual race, and when white people say, let's preserve whiteness, it's an exclusionary practice. It's about preserving laws and practices and tactics that do harm to other people. A black power movement was about opening stores and building businesses. A white power movement was a white power. That's the giga. A white power movement was about something very, 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 very different. A white power movement included lynchings and included Ku Klux Klan, etc. So let's not pretend that these are opposite sides of the same coin. When white people say, let's save our country, and even using the language of our country, when black people built this thing, when you say that, you're talking about forcing people out of the country. You're talking about laws that discriminate. You're talking about doing harm to people. Let's not pretend these are the same thing, just like these GoFundMe campaigns are not the same thing. I'm okay if everybody gets out of the GoFundMe industrial complex. I'd love that. But let's not pretend that supporting someone for a fair trial is the same thing as supporting a grown white woman berating and calling the N-word to a 5-year-old autistic black child. And the fact that everyone in here can't be unanimous in condemning that says exactly how they're not the same.
I totally agree. I'm going to go to Lily Gaddis and just ask you one more time. I mean, you've been so unashamedly proud of being a racist today, proud of using the N-word whenever you feel like it. You've had a bit of time to think about this. Is that how you want people to leave this panel debate, with thinking of you as a disgusting racist?
I don't really care what people think about me. As long as you care about what people think about you, you have no power and you lose your country. What I care about is freedom of speech. And if you're not allowed to say the most offensive things in this country, you do not have freedom of speech. I don't care what anybody says. So that's the main crux of this situation. That's what I care about with this situation. It is, we have lived for far too long in a country where you can have your life destroyed. And people say, oh, she doesn't need this money. Her life's destroyed, by the way. She'll never be able to get another job. She's got children to have to support. And I don't want to live in a country where you can say an inappropriate, rude thing, which, by the way, black people can say things to white people all the time and they never get canceled. There's no backlashing about this. I want to live in a country where people are allowed to say what they want unashamedly. And you will
well, go
not
on then,
have
say it. Say the N. Go on, say the N word. Go on.
No.
Don't
invite. No. I don't want you to invite this woman to say a racially harmful term in front of me, because I'm the only on here. So if she says it, I'm the victim of it. So please don't invite her for ratings to call me the N-word, because that's basically what it's going to be. There's a bunch of white people up here. You and one Uncle Tom on the left here, and asking her to say the N-word while I'm here is ridiculous. You would not sit here with a Jewish person and say, please use a Jewish slur in front of this Jewish. It's ridiculous. I understand you don't have any bad intent, Piers. I understand what you're trying to do. But we already know she's racist. And I don't want to invite a racial harm to me.
I hear you, and I accept that, and we'll leave it there. Thank you all very much.